at its most basic, dependency injection, instead of you manually kind of hard coding the name of a class or creating an instance of something or referencing something, instead of you doing that yourself, you just pass the injection, you pass the dependency in. So if I need to talk to logging is a good example. We've got PSR3, right, which is the logging standard. So if in my code, I've built a class which is doing a lot of stuff and I need to log what's happening. If I, in the constructor or somewhere else in the code, was manually specifying the monologue, for example, is a logger. If I specify monologue in there, then my code will only ever work with monologue. And if I've got monologue configured to send things to some server, when I try and write my tests, then it's going to try and send them off to this server, and that's really annoying. So the idea is, if you use dependency injection, you can pass in, firstly, you can swap out one logger for another, right? If you specify a shared interface that both those dependencies have, then you can pass in any one of those, any implementation that implements that interface. But when it comes to testing, you can pass in fake ones. So if you are trying to talk to, maybe you have a Twitter. I'm not doing this very well. This example will be better. If you have a Twitter class and you want to talk, and your Twitter class needs a HTTP component like Guzzle, for example. Okay. If you're using dependency injection and you pass in Guzzle into the Twitter library, then when you're writing unit tests for the Twitter library, it talks to Guzzle via a property. So it's passed into the constructor, stored in a property, then all of your methods say this HTTP client get. And because it's passed in as a dependency, that could either be Guzzle or it could be a mock of Guzzle. If it's a mock of Guzzle, then we can stub the method that actually goes off to Twitter. It stubs the GET request, and it doesn't actually go off to Twitter. It kind of returns a stubbed response, like a fake response.
Right, okay.
So it's a good way to kind of isolate the test units, the test. I can't use words today. It's a good way to isolate the test from talking to third-party resources, be it database, be it other APIs, whatever else. And it just means that your code is less hard tied to one specific implementation, but it's more tied to kind of any implementation that fits past that interface.
And I actually pulled up an example from PHP the Right Way, the website. What's the URL to that? PHP the Right Way is it .com or
.com? Yeah.
.com. Okay, so I pulled it from that, and I'll add this below the video. But here's a really quick example with using MySQL adapter, where you have a class called database, and there's a public function construct. In the first example, without using dependency injection, they have inside the construct this adapter equals new MySQL adapter. Whereas in the second example, which is using dependency injection, there's the MySQL adapter is inside the construct instead of being inside of the parameter of the construct instead of being inside the construct itself. And it's such a small change in the code, but then it makes it so much easier to swap out the adapter, to completely change the adapter without breaking the rest of your database class.
Exactly. If you take that a step further as well, and instead of specifically hinting for MySQL database adapter, and you search for and you hint that you require a database adapter, then you could easily pass in a Postgres database adapter or whatever adapter, and it would still work.
Yeah, completely swap it out to something completely different. Could be something local instead of an actual database, something completely different, and it would still work. And I feel like that's such a powerful concept, and for some reason it just took me so long to realize it. I wish I'd listened to this talk a few years ago.